James Pearce, the more I look at Tennessee, is a luxury. Why? Because their depth is more significant than James Pearce. They would be a very good defense without James Pearce. So if you had to choose between the depth that Tennessee has and potentially the best NFL prospect in college football, which would it be?
No, I would take the depth all day long. I would just as soon have. It's one of the things that I don't understand about roster building in the National Football League. I don't want one end, one corner, one, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need one edge rusher, one corner, one running back, one quarterback, and a wide receiver, and then I'm just scrap heaping everybody else on my roster because of where the salary cap is. An edge is good. But you could have, look, I'm a New York Giants fan, unfortunately. We had Michael Strahan for years and didn't do a single thing. But then when we got Justin Tuck and Antonio Pierce and we ended up having depth on the defensive line, people couldn't, you know what I mean? Like the Giants win 2 Super Bowls. So defensive end and edge, that's good. It's good to have that. It's not a bad thing to have that, but it's not like a quarterback. A quarterback makes makes a difference in the game. How many edge rushers in your life have you ever seen win a game for a team? To me, there's 2. Lawrence Taylor, Reggie White. I've never seen another edge rusher win a game for his team. And I don't know that James Pearce is that, and I definitely don't think he is yet. I would look at it this way. I think there's something in between luxury item and valuable, most valuable. I think like so I have an off-road vehicle, and my Bronco has 35s on it. I don't need the off-road 35 tires on it, but it's cool to have it if I ever need it. And that's kind of how I look at James Pearce is cool to have it. So maybe the luxury is the right term to use there. Because James Pearce won't win a single game for Tennessee this year, but a quarterback, running back, even a great wide receiver or depth on the defensive line probably will win some games for Tennessee this year.
I would throw Derek Thomas maybe in that conversation, which kind of was a poor man's Lawrence Taylor. Lance said best defensive line depth since 2004, 2005. I covered that team, and I didn't think it was as deep as this one, Caleb.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny. I'm starting to think, depth can be more important than overall weapons in general on the defensive line, unless you have, is it safe to say, wouldn't a bigger exception be a defensive tackle than a defensive end? And Dave and I have gone back and forth on this forever. I want to know what you would think. I still would take a combo of John Henderson and Albert Hainsworth on the interior before I would take a James Pearce on the edge.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
College football.
I agree. I absolutely would, especially in this day and age of college football, because interior pass rush is so much more important right now. Dudes aren't just sitting in the pocket, just 5-7 step drop. And so that edge beating his guy means that you've disrupted how many ever plays. James Pearce is a great player, not a very good player, great player, could be the number 1 pick in the draft. But I don't like it. What's a realistic sack projection for him this year? 12? Right? Like, is that an unreasonable one, or am I too low saying 12? Like, so that's 12. Like, does he affect the blocking on every single play? Myles Garrett in the NFL affects the blocking on every single play what teams do. And so that, even though you don't see the stats necessarily, that is a game changer. James Pearce can't affect the blocking on what Tennessee does because of the depth that they have at defensive line. So if you told me right now I could roll with James Pearce comes off of if you put it to me this way, you don't get James Pearce. He decides I'm locking it up. I'm going to pull a Bosa, and I'm waiting for it to be the number 1 pick in the draft, and I'm not playing anymore. But everybody else on the defensive line stays healthy. Or you have James Pearce, and you deal with the normal wear and tear that you deal with a defensive line. I would take everybody else just because depth matters that much more than one high-level player at that position, in my opinion.
Interesting. The other thing that I found very interesting about James Pearce is I went back and watched because I'm sick. And I kind of tracked what he did. He dropped into coverage a lot, and he only played 10 plays, so he didn't play a lot. But to me, I think that's kind of giving NC State a look where he's going to be more active as a pass rusher against the Wolfpack.
It could be. I don't know, honestly. If you look at it, most of Pierce's stats came from a few games, right? And then you had a lot of just not a lot, you know what I mean, from him. So I don't know what he's going to be and what he's going to do. I also don't know how they're going to use him, because I thought James Pearce was most effective when Tennessee had the depth on a defensive line last year where they could Like they were just sending 4 in, and it was almost like a line change in hockey where 4 would go out, 4 would go in. Pearce is fresh. That's when I thought he was most disruptive. When he had to stay on the field the entire game, you saw the numbers go down. Now you also saw it was later in the season. You saw the competition get better. So I don't know how they're going to use him, and we'll see. I don't think Chattanooga gives us a gauge of what he's going to do. I think there were a lot of things he had to work on, but the raw ability is incredible. So let's see how much he's grown and how he can affect blocking when he's on the field for 60 plays a game. I want to see what that looks like if he can stay on the field for 60 plays a game.
Yeah, so playing off that, Will, can we go to this? Keenan Peely or James Pearce? Who's more important? Because I think there's an argument. Am I crazy to say there's an argument for, and I think Dave wrote this, right? That we both think that at least this weekend, Keenan Peely is more important, and it's possible all season.
Specifically Saturday, I would say Peely.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially this week. Now, I like the linebackers that they have, but they're all unproven, right? So, and I watched Keenan Peely play a high level of college football. So I would agree with you that Keenan Peely is more important, especially this week because of the way that they use Concepcion. That I also think, like, look, we all know what Robert Anae does, the offensive coordinator at NC State. He's done the same thing forever since he was at BYU and Virginia, and they're going to run the ball up the middle. That's the thing they're going to do. Like, that is something they're going to do. They're going to run play action off of it. And so I think that this week I would agree with you, Caleb, that Keenan Peely is probably more important this week than James Pearce will be.
I go back to last year when Keenan Peely was out and they didn't have his leadership and calling the plays. Tennessee's linebackers just like they were running around lost.
Yeah, no, I agree. And well, you had Herring, who probably didn't need to be on the field yet. You had Arian Carter, who felt like who was lost. Helander, they didn't know what they were doing. And I just never thought Aaron Beasley was an SEC level player. There were games where he was an SEC level player, but he was a guy that would have run 4.7, 4.8 the combine. Like that's just he's just not but he played his butt off to be able to even get to the level that he did. But to me, he was a guy that should have been a group of 5 mid-major linebacker, and I think he'd have been pretty good with that. I think he played above what I would have considered his potential. But yeah, look, there were a lot of times, too, you watch those guys diving at ankles. You watch the Alabama game, the third quarter. If you go back and watch that game, it's how many times it was the pass off between linebacker and safety is where Jalen Milroe would attack. And Tennessee got lit up like a Christmas tree in that spot. So having a linebacker that knows what to do there in that pass off, having a linebacker that against Missouri will step into the alley and hit somebody in their hips or in their stomach as opposed to diving at their ankles. I think that's going to be massive for Tennessee this year because it was a problem. It was.
No, agreed. And I like what Keenan Peely brings just as far as an even kill approach to this team. Let's turn to specifically the guys that put their hands on the ground. You think Tyree West has proven that he's a special player, or he had a couple tackles for a loss and looked good, or do you think that's just Chattanooga? I mean, did you really draw any conclusions from any of the guys in the trenches against the Mocs?
Yeah, I think that the way they played together, right? One thing that was a problem last year, and I remember arguing with Kevin Simon about this, which I'm arguing with a guy with 11 years as an NFL scout. Maybe I need to shut up. But, I argued with him last year because the Missouri game, Tennessee goes to a 3-3. And the linebackers would run with the pulling H-back, and then Missouri would just run outside zone to that side. And I would be like, Kevin, what in the world are these linebackers running with the eye candy? They've got to be, where the play's going. Everybody in the building knows where the play's going. Everybody watching on television knows where the play's going. Somebody's got to stay outside and set an edge. And his argument was, no, it's that defensive end's job to set an edge. Well, he wasn't doing it. So, it may be somebody's job to, if the trash guy, it's his job to pick up my trash on Thursday mornings. If he doesn't do it, I got to go take it to the dump after that, right? And so that was my argument was, well, they're not going to do it. So why don't you're going to have to change your strategy. And he said, no, this is how we teach it. If the H-back goes in motion, then the linebackers need to run that direction. That way you're already there for pursuit. What Tyree West did was set that edge. And he set an edge in a way that I have not seen since Josh Heupel's been here yet from a defensive end. And he did an amazing job with it. Everybody points out the sack that he had. That was on a blown blocking assignment. It was a very good play. But the very next play, he sets an edge and ends up with a tackle for a loss and hits the running back in the backfield. And that was something I don't think that we've seen from Tennessee's defensive line in quite a long time.
Will, how crucial is something like that in making a superstar out of an edge rusher like James Pearce? Because to bring it back to James Pearce, elite edge rushers like that are typically only as good as the rest of the line, because, as I'm sure you remember, I bring up with Dave all the time, Jadeveon Clowney had a Heisman campaign in 2013, which I thought was stupid because you can always run away from an edge rusher, and he had a drop off of a year. So how much more crucial is a Tyree West or an Amari Thomas even in the middle to making a superstar out of James Pearce? That's what turns Pearce into a superstar, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I agree. I absolutely agree. Is that someone on the other side, if Pearce does affect blocking, someone on the other side has to do enough that you can't change your blocking and double team James Pearce on every single play, right? So I think that's massive. And I agree with you on Jadeveon Clowney. I didn't understand that whatsoever. I thought really good athlete, really good player. I also wonder why he's the first number 1 overall pick, because the second he deals with a high ankle sprain and loses even a split second on his explosiveness, he's just a guy, or a pretty good guy, and that's what he was once he got to the NFL. But what I think that somebody else on that other edge means that you've got to block Tennessee honest. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chris Jones is fantastic. When teams have to double team Chris Jones, that's when things and can collapse the offensive line. That's when things can get better. That's when things get better for the Chiefs, and where Jones has his value. Warren Sapp. I have never seen anything until the first time I saw Warren Sapp play in person. I don't think that I had ever seen anything like that, where that dude just collapses an entire side of the offensive line, and the rest of the Bucs defense was able to just feast unblocked. And it was running back versus Derek Brooks. It was running back versus whoever they had at edge. Like it was wild how much that can affect it when somebody has to double team with a chip a guy like Warren Sapp. So can James Pearce become that? And I don't think Clowney ever was that. I thought he was a really good player that you didn't have to double and triple team. Myles Garrett is a guy you have to double and triple team. So I think for Pearce, to me, it's more about how he's going to affect the blocking moving forward. But he does have to be out there. I mean, think about Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett is a rotational third down pass edge rusher, right? And so now you can be on the field for 2 downs because people are throwing 2 out of 3 downs these days. But he's not an every down edge rusher. J.J. Watt was an every down edge, right? T.J. Watt's an every down edge. Myles Garrett's an every down edge. But we see teams that will bring in these pass rush specialists, and that's what they do, and they're rotational players, but they're kind of like middle relievers versus being like a starter when you get to the next level.
Let me ask you this. Tennessee's best defensive asset is, and this is our poll question, James Pearce, depth, the offense.
I think it's the offense. I do. Because I've watched Tennessee. Yeah, I've watched Tennessee win 10 games with the 125th ranked pass defense in America. So I think the offense, being able to go tempo, scoring a bajillion points, it allows them to be bend, don't break. They don't have to be dominant. But I like having that depth. I would like having that depth a lot, especially if my offense is going to go a million miles an hour yet again. And so I know they're going to be on the field for a long time.